Hello there, welcome to ETV News. I am Grum Tariku. Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan need to nurture the narrative towards peace, cooperation, mutual coexistence and development without harming one another. The Nile in general and the GERD project in particular are opportune for such a higher purpose, says Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The Premier said so in a statement he made regarding the $4.5 billion mega dam on the Blue Nile. GERD. Shfarao Lako presents the full statement as follows.
Based on agriculture, manufacturing and industry. It is committed to developing social infrastructure with quality education, health systems, and the provision of clean water for its people. Ethiopia also aims to nurture a clean environment able to sequester carbon and emit net zero carbon, to maintain biological diversity, and to build a resilient ecosystem that is not exposed to climate vulnerabilities. The key to realizing such ambitions, however, is rooted in energy. For Ethiopia, the most comparative advantage in its energy generation needs is hydropower, as it is blessed both by topography and water resources. Electricity is a basic infrastructure lacking in Ethiopia, and over 53% of my fellow citizens, or about 60 million people, do not have access. Without electricity, no country has ever managed to defeat poverty, brought about inclusive growth, secured a dignified life for its citizens, and managed to attain sustainable economic, social, and environmental development. Hence why Ethiopia believes that Nile waters can be developed reasonably and equitably for the benefit of all people of riparian countries without causing significant harm. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam GERD is a good example that is demonstrative of the principle of cooperation. The dam has been constructed through the earnest contribution of all citizens of Ethiopia and holds multiple benefits for the two downstream countries of Sudan and Egypt, as well as the East African region at large. A large volume of the Nile water body, amounting to about 85%, originates from the highlands of Ethiopia. As a transboundary resource, this water traverses through Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. The Ethiopia side comes from the tributaries of Abai, Baro, and Tekeze rivers, while the other 15% of the Nile comes from other upstream Nile riparian countries. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam GERD is under construction near the border with the Sudan, where all tributaries of the Abai join the main stem of the river. This consequently makes the location ideal to maximize electricity generation. The major function of the GERD is to manage the highly variable flow of the Abai and produce 15,700 gigawatt-hour per year electricity, since for Ethiopia, electricity remains a resource that is enormously lacking. Large quantity of the flow, about 90%, occurs within 4 months of the rainy season, and during the rest of the year, the mighty Abai trickles like a small river. The dam is needed to regulate this variable flow by reducing flooding and augmenting dry flow. Ethiopia's intention in constructing the GERD is to enable the regulation function so that electricity generation from the infrastructure is uniform throughout the year. This means, as a hydropower dam, the GERD does not consume water. Rather, the water continues to flow downstream uninterrupted. The benefits for downstream countries are often untold. In Sudan, for instance, the GERD provides ample protection against devastating floods and the effects of water shortage during drought and dry periods. It will help Sudanese water infrastructure to be operated optimally as they receive regulated flow. This means that more electricity could be generated from existing infrastructure and adequate and regular water could flow in the river downstream throughout the year to enable reliable water supply for people, agriculture, and the ecology. The GERD also brings more energy to the already interconnected systems of Sudan and Ethiopia, as well as to others. Egypt also benefits from water conservation at the GERD instead of wastage of billions of cubic meters of water to evaporation and in downstream flood plains. The GERD also helps to prevent future spillage that overtops the Aswan Dam. Globally and in the Nile region, the GERD as a clean renewable energy source would help to reduce emission that could avoid up to 10.6 million tons of greenhouse gases if it were produced from fuel, coal, or gas plants. Hence, development of the GERD plays an important role in meeting and increasing renewable energy generation share toward Sustainable Development SDG Goal 7 and better water management of Goal 6 of the SDGs, as well as meeting many targets of Africa's Agenda 2063. For the Nile region and for all its citizens, the GERD has a potential to stabilize energy mix. Hydropower, due to its nature of flexible operation and suitability, can be put in operation in a matter of minutes and can enhance harnessing of other energy sources of solar and wind energy that are variable depending on weather and climate. Undoubtedly, it will also enable affordable energy provision to the region. While perceived negative factors have been made more visible in the GERD discourse, the positive attributes rather outweigh the opposing rhetoric and downplay the potential for cooperation to mitigate negative factors if such factors exist. It's time for our three countries of Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan to nurture the narrative towards building peace, cooperation, mutual coexistence, and development of all our people without harming one another. Nile in general and the GERD project in particular are opportune for such a higher purpose.
A member of the Ethiopian diaspora urged the diaspora community to press ahead with the hashtag No More movement until the movement brings solid policy changes. Talking to ETV, Ayale Hundesa, board chairperson of Save Ethiopia, further lauded the diaspora for helping thwarting efforts by some nations to move conferences away from Addis Ababa. Shagawi Mato reports.
The Western Bloc has been intervening in the internal affairs of Ethiopia, supporting the terrorist PLF. Some latest developments like delisting Ethiopia from AGOA and undermining the status of Addis Ababa as a conference center could be cited as some of economic and political pressures by the West and its allies. However, the vigorous struggle waged by the Ethiopian diaspora helped send shockwaves through some of the Western quarters. With the rebirth of Pan-Africanism, Addis Ababa is chosen to stage the upcoming African Union Summit after many challenges. The fruit of the No More movement by the diaspora community and the hard work of the Ethiopian government have made it possible for the African Union Summit to take place in Ethiopia.
Ethiopians and the Ethiopian government has worked hard to pursue this situation, and there was a big movement around the world, which we call it No More, the interference of the Western countries by diminishing the sovereignty of Ethiopia. So that work has been, the fruit of that work is brought this summit takes place in Ethiopia. So it's a big diplomatic achievement and success that Ethiopia has overcome.
He urged the diaspora community to press ahead with the No More movement until the movement brings solid policy changes. Ayale further urged the government to accommodate the interests of Ethiopians so as to stabilize political and economic upheavals. He said if the government plays its role to forge greater unity among Ethiopians, the initiative will help stave off further attempts by the West to play its arm-twisting tactics against Ethiopia.
The Ethiopian government has to stand firm like it has done in the last 1 or 2 years, not to kneel down and just submissive or a puppet of the Western Bloc. You can achieve that by accommodating the people's interests, the interest of the Ethiopian people. If the government of Ethiopia is accommodating and follow what the Ethiopian peoples are expecting from the government, then the diaspora or the Ethiopian, the Ethiopian people at large, or the diaspora community in particular, can stood up together and still force the Western blocs to not to involve in Ethiopian internal affairs. First of all, economical stability, political stability, and taking with government the entire community will take you there. The more the country is stable, the more the government and the Ethiopian people are stood together, the less the influence of the foreign powers.
You are watching ETV News. The latest decision made by African leaders to convene the upcoming 35th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly in Addis Ababa is a significant diplomatic victory for Ethiopia. The remark came here when spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dina Mufti, briefed the media on trending issues. Johannes van Town has more on this.
It's to be recalled that the West and its allies tried their utmost at stripping Addis Ababa of its significance as a conference center. As the TPLF wanton destruction on civilians and its invasion raged on, the West tried to assist the group with some diplomatic overtures, like undermining Addis Ababa's role as a seat of the AU and other continental organizations. Some vigorous efforts were underway to take the venue of the upcoming 35th African Union Summit away from Addis Ababa or limit it to a virtual meeting so that Addis Ababa loses its status as a viable conference center.
As you know, there are a lot of doubts about whether it is going to be virtual or physical, but after intense lobbies and diplomatic interactions with the African countries, finally it is decided that the AU summit will take place physically in Addis.
According to Dina, some nations who took part in the conspiracy to move AU's capital away from Addis Ababa were using COVID-19 as a pretext. When the TPLF's invasion seemed to take more grounds, these nations added insecurity and false alarm by some embassies and international organizations to the list, further undermining Addis Ababa. Despite efforts to prevent the meeting from taking place in Addis Ababa or to limit it to a virtual event, African leaders saw through the ploy and decided to allow Addis Ababa to host the meeting.
This is actually is a heavy blow to those people who are professing the doomsday here, and the ones who are propagating about the instability in the city, so that the city is not capable of hosting the African leaders. It's a big success, a big diplomatic success as well. The agenda of this summit will be building resilience in nutrition on the African continent. This is an agenda that will have a relationship with the boosting agricultural production as well as food security. As we know very well, Africa has an agenda which ranges from 2015 to 2025, revolves around capacity building in the areas of agriculture. So, noting the decision, our Prime Minister, His Excellency Dr. Abiy, expressed his appreciation for the African leaders for letting this to happen on the basis of realizing the fact that Ethiopia has been always committed for the African causes, and Ethiopia has been there for Africans in times of need. And the preparation is underway also. National committee composed of all pertinent institutions that will host the summit has been formed.
This shows that Ethiopia is still a preferred destination for the continental and other international conferences, the ambassador said. It's to be recalled that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said hosting the meeting will create opportunities for Ethiopia to restate its stance on the African agenda and practically exhibit Ethiopia's good status to our African allies. The ordinary session of the Executive Council or Ministerial Session and the 35th ordinary session of the Assembly of the AU will take place from the 2nd to the 6th February 2022. The AU heads of states and government declared that the year 2022 as the year of nutrition under the theme Building Resilience in Nutrition on African Continent, Accelerate the Human Capital, Social and Economic Development.
Let us all unite and celebrate together.
Ethiopia had to march to the battlefront with an army whose capacity left much to be desired. This was owing to the fact that some elements of the terrorist TPLF amidst the army were impediments to whatever reform the leadership sought to implement. Thus, the army's biggest weapon at hand when it pursued the terrorists up in the north was a deep sense of patriotism and public support.
በየደረጃው ያሉ ኮማንድ አመራር ከአንድ ብሔር የወጣ ነው።
While ruling the nation for 27 years with an iron fist, the TPLF put Tigrayans in charge of the most decisive sectors. This helped it achieve its mere interests. While most army members felt disaffected, the TPLF and its sympathizers kept embezzling resources allocated to the army. While retreating to Mekelle in the wake of the reform 4 years ago, the TPLF smuggled logistics and other important machinery to its base. Thus, we had at our disposal Ethiopianism while countering the attack on our northern command back in November 2020.
ሰራዊቱ ኢትዮጵያዊ ሆኖ ያገለግላል። ኢትዮጵያዊ ሆኖ የተገነባ አይደለም።
General Ababao said when Ethiopian National Defense Forces withdrew from Mekelle in what was unilateral ceasefire meant to help the people of Tigray reflect on the situation, the TPLF used the gap to muster all its energy and invade Amhara and Afar states. The terrorist force mainly employed the dangerous human wave strategy to put the Ethiopian army into a tough situation, while at the same time relying on psychological warfare in an organized manner, often aided by the West. General Ababa also pointed out that the gallant Ethiopian army employed a variety of military strategies to complete the war in a short period of time and inflict colossal damage on TPLF.
ይዞት የነበረው መድፍ ይዞት አልተመለሰም። ይዞት የነበረውን አየር መቋሚያ ይዞት አልነበረ በሙሉ ተደምስሷል።
Spreading fake propaganda was TPLF's mainstay of psychological warfare on the public. The TPLF showed utter disregard for the people of Tigray, unlike what its leaders said in public. They often forced conscriptionists, dragging even the elderly and children into the battlefield. After evaluating the situation, we mapped out a new strategy to end the war, and finally, the TPLF lost senior war generals and was forced to flee from all of Amhara and Afar.
ከሰው ኃይል አንፃር ከፍተኛ ኪሳራ ነው። ከቶክስ አንፃር ከፍተኛ ኪሳራ ነው። ከስነ ልቦናና ከሞራል አንፃር ከፍተኛ ኪሳራ ነው።
Ethiopia is dipping its hands into electric cars, which some consumers approached by ATV say they are a better option besides being cost-effective. The vehicles also help significantly reduce Ethiopia's high expense of foreign currency on fuel. Goshumel So tells us more on this.
Around the world, countries and automakers are promoting electric vehicles as key technology to curb oil consumption and fight climate change. Recently, Ethiopia has started assembling electric vehicles and supplying them to the market.
I don't remember visiting the garage since I started using an electric vehicle. The engine is inverter. It works with battery and I don't use oil at all. It's been almost 3 years. So far, so good. The car has worked okay for the most part without needing services. The difference between an electric and fuel vehicle is pulse apart. In this one, once you charge the vehicle, you just drive 300 kilometers without worry.
ከ3 ቀን ከ4 ቀን በኋላ ነው ቻርጅ ብዙ ጊዜ የምናደርገው ያው በደንብ የምንሄድበት ከሆነ ብዙ ፋይዳዎች አሉት ብዬ ነው የማስበው።
Electric vehicles have multiple advantages. I used fuel engine car for many years, but after I started using electric vehicle, I've been able to save a lot of money and energy.
Electric car assembly PLC said electric vehicles also help ease the sound pollution problem in the city and have better battery durability.
Compare electric vehicles with oil-consuming cars and you'll discover that electric vehicles have zero emission of gas and sound. The age of battery for an electric vehicle is 8 to 10 years. You'll spend over 800,000 in 8 or 10 years, but for electric vehicles, in a cost of 1.47 birr per kilowatt, you spend only 40,000 birr.
The vehicles have also been chosen for helping save foreign currency.
Producing electric vehicles in Ethiopia is an important initiative to support Ethiopia's economy. Ethiopia spends $2.5 billion annually for fuel consumption. So the National Bank of Ethiopia will support such investments to cut costs of fuel and reduce foreign currency investment.
Electric vehicle assemblies created more jobs and have also been playing a key role in knowledge transfer. It was learned.
Time now for Forex update. Let's have a look. Many Africans are expressing support for Chinese President Xi Jinping's view on multilateralism. It is to be recalled that President Xi echoed the need for international cooperation and integration during online gathering of the World Economic Forum agenda last Monday. Xi particularly said, in the context of ongoing COVID-19 response, the world needs to explore new drivers of economic growth, new modes of social life, and new pathway for people-to-people exchange. In a bid to facilitate cross-border trade, keep industrial supply chains secure and smooth, and promote steady and solid progress in global economic recovery, economic globalization is the trend of the times, the president said. An Ethiopian economist is one such supporter of the president's view, saying the president's speech is timely for the world and Africa in particular. Take a look.
The speech categorically mentioned there is the need for bridging this development divide. And obviously, when it comes to the sub-Saharan African countries, as far as there is a very mutual respect and partnership with the West, this development divide is possible to bridge the gap that's widening from time to time. From the Chinese perspective, they are consistently promoting the open-up policy from time to time, based upon their own internal strengths and priorities. We appreciate that. This is opening a very good window of opportunity for sub-Saharan African countries, at least to confront unfairness and the way the Westerns are perceiving the role of the sub-Saharan African countries in the global economy involves a lot of unfair treatments.
Over now to weather update. Let's have a look. You've been watching ETV News. Thanks for joining us and have a pleasant day.